You know, this is for beginners, just to get some people interested, to realize just how easy it is to turn a simple motor into a generator in certain emergencies or whatever. A lot of people really don't know this. So if you're an expert in quantum physics, okay, you know, you don't have to find anything in this video impressive, but you know, not everybody is at your level, okay? But don't you want them to help with this pollution problem? Because the more people that are into alternative energy, the better our chances are for achieving it. Okay, because the powers that be, they're not going to help you. Not one bit. They're raking in the money selling you energy. So they're not going to help you find alternative sources. Not one bit. So, the more people we can get interested, the better. And just think, once you achieve free clean energy, even if you can't patent it, you can power and heat your home for free. Now this is just a regular DC motor. A lot of people really don't know this, but the motor is basically magnets and copper wire coils. When electricity goes to the coils, it creates an electrical field, which becomes an electric magnet, and the magnets repel each other. It kind of looks more like this, a bunch of magnets on a rotor. The magnetic field spinning past the coils creates electricity in the coils, which is usable. However, if you're feeding electricity into the coils, then the magnets start to spin, and it spins the motor shaft. So, if you feed electricity into the motor will spin. But if you spin the motor by hand, it creates electricity, which comes out of the wires, like a generator. Now, think of all the ways you can get that thing to spin. Use your imagination. I know it's taboo and forbidden in school, but you know what? We're going to break the rules sometime, okay? Shh. The thought police aren't looking. Figuring out how to get that to turn is half the fun, but even though I show a bicycle in my cartoon, that's probably the last way you want to try, unless you need the exercise, which is good for you. But for long-term needs, I would try a 20-ton bottle jack for like 30 bucks and jack up a couple of tons of weight and rig it to some kind of geared down apparatus where it will spin this thing as the weight slowly comes back down. You should spin it for a couple of hours if you rig it right. Take you all of 10 minutes to jack it up. Come on, I know you can do it. Now you can do the same thing with a heavy duty spring, coil spring that'll retain the energy instead of carrying all that weight around with you if you want to go mobile. And of course you can use wind power or water power if you're camping. But they try to tell you can't do that anymore because they want to protect the fish. I think we all know they don't care about you or the fish. And hey, I didn't give them that reputation, okay? But do what you can. Okay, in part 1 we looked at how to turn a simple motor into a generator. And someone was asking if I could show how it was hooked up or how it was wired. So I thought I would clarify right now that this particular motor only has 2 leads or 2 wires, a positive and a negative, and I simply connected them to the head of a flashlight, positive and negative. It was that simple. However, I will be showing a battery bank, wiring, and other schematics, or the basics of, at some point in this video. However, first let's review how we discussed turning it with a water source. And I want to discuss having a backyard pond for many reasons. You can raise your own edible fish, edible plants, edible water plants. You could raise koi, which can be sold for $500 a fish once they get larger. And they're just enjoyable to have. So if you happen to have one and you're going to stay in town, you can still try to get off grid or save a little on your electric bill. And the idea is this: behind the bamboo or whatever you have to hide your stuff, you can have a setup like this. Now they say the most you can do is break even with a wheel, but if you had a series of wheels, you might get a little more than what you put in. If you had them all turning, each one turning a motor generator, of course. And you can also use pulleys to get a faster spin on the motor generator, depending on the power of your water. Just rig it so your Jenny isn't getting all wet, you know, a fair distance from the actual waterways. And in fact, if you had a pulse circuit between the power source and the pump, what it does is pulse the energy. It turns it on and off real fast, and so you're using half the energy, but each pulse is like a surge, so it increases your torque in your motor or your pump. That's my understanding anyway. So you could operate the whole thing on half the power right there, and yet all your water wheels are still turning. You see, you need a waterfall to aerate the pond and circulate the water. But now you can run it for free and maybe even get free energy out of it. Possible over Unity, I've heard reports. In any case, my friend built one, and his koi eat bugs, and he also feeds them, but only half the year because they don't eat in the wintertime if it's cold, and it is up here. They kind of hibernate. So I think he spends like 40 bucks a year in fish food. But after 7 years, you got 20 fish, each of them worth 500 bucks, you know, in 7 years. Although there was a blue herring out there eating a couple of them one time, but you know, it can be a business, and you can run it for dirt cheap, if not free. Anyway, let's get into the schematics now. This is a simple scheme of how you'd hook it up. I'm pretty sure that's correct. Or you can freeze frame it and at least see all the parts you will need, no matter how you're turning the generator. It looks more complicated than it is. That yellow thing is just a simple voltmeter. Battery banks could be car batteries, but most people use deep submarine batteries. Some people use forklift batteries. They're made to last a long time, years, you know. And you can almost drain them bone dry before you charge them again. Here's a look at some battery bank wiring schemes. This is a battery bank wired in parallel. That maintains the same voltage but increases the amperage. And this is a battery bank wired in series. It maintains amperage but multiplies voltage. So in this case you'd have 12 volts times 5. You'd have 60 volts. You can learn a lot more about this at a website called otherpower.com. They have all kinds of diagrams and a forum to help you put together all kinds of battery banks and windmills and everything else. Tell them Johnny Coolpants sent you. In part 1 we also discussed the using of heavy weights jacked up to turn a generator, also a heavy duty coil spring, and even a bicycle. But I have an idea I call the amp surfer, or the Perkins pendulum. I think if it was hooked up to a flywheel it'd be a lot easier than a bicycle. And okay, maybe you don't have to go that fast, but you know, something the kids could play on too. In any case, you're using your weight, and your weight is doing most of the work. You're just shifting your weight back and forth while you watch TV. I'd put a one-way slip clutch on that flywheel so the rope isn't trying to turn it both ways. Or even have 2 flywheels up there, one for each side of the surfboard. Anyway, if I'm talking like a mumble bum right now, it's because half the house is still asleep. I do this in the wee hours sometimes. Otherwise, you can hear the parrot in the background during the day. Long story. And if you see people down here posting things or quoting the second lie of thermodynamics, well, just remember, he's disinfo and he's on the power company payroll. So don't listen to him. It's as simple as that. Tesla said you can make free electricity all day long, and you still use his alternating current coming out of your wall today. Hey, if you need an idea illustrated or animated, let me know. We are in that business. And if you like this channel, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you and have a good day.